Hello friends, welcome to this live stream, and this is related to the science, and today we have a very interesting subject to discuss with you. And since we are live, you can interact with me. If you have any questions, suggestions, you can actually use the chat, and your chat will display here where my finger is. And so today the subject is about uh, Europa basically. So we know that Europa is the moon of Jupiter, and Europa is a satellite. It has it has been talked about that there is life on the surface of Europa simply because there is huge water reserves on Europa, and now so much so that there is at least 4 to 5 times more water on a smaller body as compared to Earth. So that is why it is such a unique thing where on the surface of Europa there is a terrestrial ocean which is supposed to be at least 200 kilometers deep. 200 kilometers deep, so it's pretty deep. And then this ocean of salty water is protected by a icy shell, which it also is 5 kilometers, 5 to 6 kilometers thick. So a substantial protection is available in the form of ice sheet, which is sort of floating on the ocean. And the latest finding shows that the surface rotate, because obviously this is it is free, and since underneath there is water, it rotates at a different angle. So it is it is not stable. The icy sheet on Europa is not completely stable. It's not a stable ground, and because of this rotation, etc., it keeps changing. There are a lot of changes in the surface, cracks that keep appearing. So, so how this happens basically? That is what the discussion is. And as you can see in this picture, the Europa is having a lot of these cracks on the surface, and these cracks are simply because underneath the water is sloshing around all over the place. It's moving somewhere. It is getting hot because of the heat activity in the core of the Europa, and because of that, certain places water get heated up, and it has to come out. So it comes out, and it actually, or there must be some currents based on the gravitational interaction. There must be some currents from Jupiter, from the gravity is affecting Europa from Jupiter, and because of that the water, and water is always flowing, you know that. Because of that there may be some permanent current underneath, and because of these currents the ice sheet may be free to rotate based on whatever condition the body is in the orbit. So there is a large ocean which is actually driving most of these activities on the surface of Europa. And there are sometimes water gets heated up, and our satellites have seen that the hot steam vents out from Europa. It has some mechanism because of which the heat comes out, and because of that we can see these steam volcanoes on the surface, because at some point there must be some eruption happening, and that may be heating up the water on the surface of, or in the interiors of Europa, which will basically has to come out from somewhere, and it will break out the icy sheet and then come out from there. So we see these vents which are also visible on the surface. And then there are other features that the underneath current, because if there is a hot and cold areas in the water underneath, obviously the hot and cold conditions will create some sort of currents, which will, just like we have on Earth, the ocean currents, where the hot areas will transfer the heat to the colder areas, and the cold current will basically transfer heat to the hotter areas on Earth. Similarly, there may be these currents which may be driving the entire ice formation on the surface of Europa. The point is that the ice which is floating on the surface is not moving as the planet is moving. The ice sheet has a totally different speed of rotation, and that is determined by the ocean currents. And that is something that we need to understand very clearly. So if we are planning our space mission in future, and if we are planning to land on the icy surface thinking that it is stable, but in reality they are like giant sheets of ice which are floating and probably breaking apart constantly, turning over also, and new water from underneath is coming up, and the water which is coming up may be hot, and so therefore the surface conditions are very very dynamic. The surface of Europa keeps changing very rapidly because of these things. And as you can see in this picture that Europa, these cracks, the water is oozing out, and this water is basically salty water, and also has a lot of organic compounds mixed with salt. So this indicates that the salty ocean, similar to Earth's salty ocean, Europa also has a salty ocean underneath where the conditions are adequate for life, even though there is total darkness. Uh, but life could exist. Probably there could be some sort of animal kingdom underneath which exists in complete darkness. And once in a while, when the ice sheet breaks and changes its orientation, this the underneath water oozes out, which is filled with organic compounds. And important thing is that it will be very risky to land on the surface of Europa because the surface is not stable. The surface is ever changing. Even though in the pictures it looks like that it is a very stable ice sheet which is covering Europa, but things can change instantly on the surface. And this kind of understanding about Europa will also help us understand how other ocean worlds function, in the sense that if, because we have seen so many different other planets around other stars, and some of these planets have water, so how these planets may be functioning, and some of these planets, exoplanets, have the ice sheet covered just like Europa. Underneath there will be a huge ocean. So how the conditions would be, I think the Europa will teach us the real conditions, and that we can practice and probably learn about other exoplanets which exist in the near vicinity, that we have seen so far, and as we are exploring other planets and probably trying to find out if there is life anywhere else outside the Earth. And we have actually come across a lot of these ocean worlds. So depending on their positions in their star systems, we can actually evaluate and learn from Europa, probably do some hit and trial, because landing on Europa may be very risky, because if the ice sheet is always constantly in churn, it is changing, that means the surface on Europa is not stable, and therefore landing may be very risky. So how do we basically explore Europa? That is a big question, and I think as we go along, humanity and the astronauts will learn more about different methods. Maybe they will come out with more ingenious method to explore Europa in future, that will prepare us to send probes in future to the other exoplanets which are probably similar to Europa, water world like Europa, and then we will have machinery, adequate technology to explore these planets. So friends, I end my live stream, and if you have any questions, comments, kindly feel free to send in your comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you again in the next one.